Hey guys, hope you're keeping well. Thanks a lot for joining this live stream. Um, in this live stream, we're going to be exploring the mysterious nature of life by looking at things like space exploration, precognitive dreams, and some mysterious stories that have happened to people. I'm throughout my life have experienced some precognitive dreams where I happen to dream the future before it actually ends up happening. And this always got me really interested. So whenever I'd land up in a conversation, I'd end up asking people about their own experiences, if they've ever experienced something like this. And what I was doing yesterday was actually looking at a Reddit thread. And while looking at this thread, I was looking at stories of people that have basically experienced the same thing. And it's just, there's quite some unbelievable stories out there. You just don't know how to look for them. And once you look for them, you end up finding them, eh? So let's go have a look. Microsoft? Yep. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's have a look. So just make sure everything's running fine. So yeah, basically what I've been doing is I've been looking at these Reddit threads to see stories of people that would actually experience precognitive dreams in order to find out how common and prevalent this phenomena actually is. And it's a lot more common than some of the stories are really quite intriguing. We got reports of people seeing their loved ones before they die in a dream, or sometimes even while they're awake, as seeing their loved ones like a poltergeist or something. And I've heard stories like this first-handedly from people throughout my life. And so I thought it'd be interesting to actually have a look into this. So have a look, shall we? So no clue, it has happened to me my whole life too. I will dream, and then as an event is happening, I remember the dream and sometimes even seem to know what's about to happen next. One time I did not get into a car because I had a dream where the car got into a horrible car wreck. The first part of the dream was in black and white, and the color part was what happened to me. And I presume the black and white was accident because that was the dream. That's what the dream was about. I got on a bus to the place I was going. Instead, the person who sat in the seat I gave up died in a car wreck in that seat an hour later. That shook me up pretty good. I mean, that's quite a phenomenal story of someone actually dreaming of a car accident and actually choosing not to actually get into that car. And the person that actually did get into that seat ended up actually dying in a car accident. I don't know, it's not useful usually, except once or twice it's given me a choice. I don't think I would have had otherwise. Also, I almost never dream unless it's this kind of dream. Very occasionally, I have weird dreams if I sleep late, but the real ones I have are like these. And some people will translate this as deja vu, which is also quite a weird experiences from time to time. I think it's quite weird. It just feels like I've experienced it before it's actually happened. And lately I've been experiencing that quite a lot. So this uses this, I'm pretty sure what you're describing is deja vu that I've had before. However, I had a vivid dream, a memorable dream, where a childhood friend was at my job. In the dream, she was a new hire, a different name, but I insisted she was this other friend. And just a few days later, I was at work when that very friend showed up. I'd seen her in about 10 years. So, I mean, it's quite an interesting story, and there's quite a few stories like this where people actually dream of scenes, settings, location, people, even conversations that happen before they happen. And I've been reading through this for quite a while, and there's quite a lot of stories like that. Another user, Tactical Kitten, says, I've actually had before something happened and did remember it and changed of something different from the dream. In this dream, I was doing some math homework and I was really struggling. But after tons of work, I eventually got through it. Then I woke up. Lo and behold, later that day, I actually got the exact same page of math homework given to me, only this time I knew how to do it and I finished the homework perfectly with ease. It's possible that I subconsciously saw the homework before, but I doubt it, especially since I never looked ahead for that stuff. And even then, I don't know how my brain would have subconsciously known the right way to do a math problem and then teach me how to do it in my dream. I do have a real knack for mental math, though, so I suppose it's possible that if I ever did see homework before, then my brain just kind of worked it out the hard way without actually initially knowing how. Uh, yes, and it's fairly common to have a few of these in your life. Unfortunately, often misattributed to do because it sounds too much like something supernatural, since it can't really be of us have them more than often, though. I generally have something like 3 to 4 year. I generally have something like 3 to 4 year, and most of them happen in real life months later, or more rarely a few years later. The main reason I think it's real and not deja vu is I used to write down most of my vivid and realistic dreams I had growing up and checked what I wrote after the event in questions actually happened. Usually, I've been thinking about these dreams several times between dreaming them and them happening in real life, and occasionally re-dreaming them in between. It has been enough for me to believe in it and be less skeptical about true dreams. Trying to find a story. Yes, I vividly remember a nightmare I had about my first day in calculus. It was a gigantic lecture hall and every seat seemed to be taken. So I just sat all the way in the back. I had no idea that what the professor was teaching, and I was panicking that I was already going to fail the class right as they were passing out the test on the first day. Fast forward several weeks when I ended up actually taking the class. The lecture hall was almost exactly the same in its layout in almost every way. I had literally never stepped into this room before. I also ended up sitting way in the back because every seat was taken. The only part that didn't turn out correctly was taking the test on the first day, but we did get handouts. I had reoccurring dreams of a funeral for 2 months when I was 18. Each time I had the dream, I would get a little bit more information, but I always woke up crying. I couldn't ever figure out whose funeral it was until about 10 days before my dad died. I'd been having reoccurring dreams of his funeral for months and didn't tell anyone about it. I just figured it would go away. During his actual funeral, I was sitting in the church and suddenly realized I was living out the dream. It was an overall so comforting. I had a few dreams like this since, but never a funeral, thankfully. So, I've heard a couple stories like this, and some of the stories I read last night were quite crazy, because some people really described watching things play out as they did in their dreams, scene by scene. And it really makes you wonder about, what dreams are. If we take a second to actually think about it, we when we take a second to actually think about dreams. Dreams are quite crazy because our brain is almost like a quantum computer. It has the ability to simulate experiences. And lately, I've been having dreams half asleep, half awake. And while half awake, I'll hear voices saying certain things while I'm awake, as though I'm still dreaming. And I find it quite interesting to see that through our evolution as organisms and human beings on this planet, one of the things we've evolved to be able to do is actually be able to experience dreams that sometimes actually tell us about the future before the future actually happens. Got a comment here from Sacred Terra. Thank you, Sacred Terra. I actually looked at your comment yesterday in Patreon, and what you ended up saying was, let's actually just go back to that so I can actually see that you've also actually experienced something like that before, and that it's actually quite a common phenomenon. So let's actually have a look. Sorry, give me a second. I'm just trying to find. I met people later in life. Dreamed of several times. I dreamed of a boat crash that happened the next morning. It was on the news broadcast. Many different dreams have come to pass We believe all dreams come from God, and it is His figurative language of communication. And for some information on dreams and visions, check us out at www.dreamlifedecoded.com. We have a comment here that says, have you heard of Joseph in the Bible? He was a dream interpreter. We use the Joseph method for dream interpreting. He saved Egypt and the whole world from interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams. Yes, that actually is quite a phenomenal story, and those are recurring stories within the Bible where people do have these prophetic gifts, whether in dreams or waking states. And in such a significant story like that, Jacob had actually managed to save Israel by knowing in advance that they would go through a drought for 7 years, interpreting the Pharaoh's dream. And yes, I have a spiritual intelligence mentorship for dream interpretation course if you're interested. Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I'll definitely have a look at that. Thank you, Secretary. So I think it's quite interesting that we've evolved to be able to actually have dreams where when we're sleeping, we're simulating realities in our mind. And sometimes it's really interesting, the stuff we happen to see when we see how our subconscious manages to creatively create these scenes that sometimes I've never seen before in real life. And I've quite amazing and unbelievable. And you can imagine that throughout human history, people have had dreams all this time that have been quite indicative of the future and also just quite strange for people to see and experience. I remember looking at, I can't remember the guy's name, but he used to study schizophrenic patients. And he's a famous psychologist. I can't remember his name. But basically, he would interview people, and before World War II, a lot of the people that he spoke to reported having dreams of World War II before it actually happened. I read some stories yesterday where someone actually dreamt of a war happening in Europe 2 months before the Ukraine war had started. I had read another story where someone had basically dreamt of the pandemic before it actually happened, and actually saw people wearing masks in their dream. So throughout history, we actually see that people have experienced, I mean, I'm just trying to remember the guy's name. It's not Nietzsche, it's the other guy that he worked with. But what's his name? Or something, those initials. But here, he spoke to a lot of people, and they actually dreamed of World War II before it actually happened. And they dreamt of a big war happening, and next thing you know, World War II is actually happening. We got a message here from Good Heart Guardian, Grand Nana's brother. Good to see you, man. Hope you're well. And the future is the past, and the past is the future. This is the nowness. So yeah, I find it interesting that we can actually have precognitive experiences. I think the Bible has a lot of these stories of many prophecies, over 2,500 that had occurred within the Bible, and 2,000 of those prophecies coming true. And a lot of those prophecies were very detailed interpretations of what would take place and happen in the future. For instance, one of them was a prophet, I can't remember his, I think it's Isaiah, but I may be wrong. He was prophesying that Israel would be exiled again, and ultimately the king of Babylon would take over them for 70 years, which ended up actually happening as Babylon basically, I think, destroyed the second temple and took the Israelites into captivity as they ultimately became exiled to Babylon for over 70 years. And when you actually read through the warnings given by this prophet, they were extremely detailed warnings to the point that he had predicted that they would be captured for 70 years. Another message from Secretary here. I dreamed a week before I had an ear infection that I was blind. Then the following week, I got really bad ear infection and couldn't open my eyes for 3 days until we prayed it out. That's amazing. I'm really happy to hear that. And that's another thing that interests me, is that answered prayers. I have a book that's called The Power of Miracles, and it's got a whole bunch of reports of miracles taking place throughout the world. And I used some of my cannabis oil and put a few drops in my ears every day and eventually healed as well. Shame, Secretary, that's quite a scary experience to go through, losing your sight for 3 days. It actually kind of reminds me of that Bible story in the book of Acts where Paul, I think it was persecuting Christians and then had a vision of Jesus Christ who'd asked him, "Why you're persecuting me?" And after that had lost his vision for 3 years, and someone else in their dreams was guided to go to him. And I think he blessed him or prayed over him, and all of a sudden his vision was restored. So it is quite interesting to actually see these stories take place in a record that's taken place over, a couple thousand years. So I just find it interesting that us as humans and animals too have developed this ability to dream. We're experiencing simulated realities in our mind when we're asleep, and sometimes they're precognitive experiences. I also heard of a story where Native Americans were reporting seeing people holding things that look like stones. That's how they described it back in the day, because obviously they had never seen a phone before, and to them it probably looked like a stone being held to their face. And they spoke about roads and phones. And before they actually happened, they actually had dreams and visions of this taking place. So there's quite a lot of stories within history where certain cultures have seen things in the future, in the past. And I find that quite interesting. Secretary says, yes, I was laying in bed with a towel over my eyes in the dark and it was really scary. God is awesome. Miracles are real. And it's amazing that you prayed for that and your prayers were answered. I've been speaking to some people about things they've been through and ultimately praying for them to be healed. I was one of those people when I had schizophrenia, I actually prayed for it to come to an end. And I was walking through a shopping center in a mall and I looked at this guy's jacket, and this guy's jacket said deliverance. And shortly after that, I started being healed of my schizophrenia. So I actually found it to be quite an interesting coincidence and pattern that took place where I actually saw this message of deliverance. And, next thing I know, I'm actually being healed of this. So, let's just have another look. I read a couple of interesting stories yesterday. I wish I could actually go through them now with you. Let's just check dreaming stuff before it happens. Read it. And I read some really interesting stories, and I've heard stories of people being visited by their loved ones before the night before their loved ones pass away. This is actually somewhat common story I've heard people actually describe and say to me. I think my mother is actually one of those people. And there's people that have had dreams of people, their friends or loved ones having a baby before they've had a baby. So this is actually quite common. And if you actually take time to research this and go through this, you'll see a lot of stories by people that report extremely peculiar and interesting precognition dreams. So, I'm definitely under the impression that this is absolutely real and this takes place more than we may know. I just think a lot of it's unreported and a lot of people don't actually speak about it. Here's one. I've dreamt of people or situations before they happen. For example, I dreamt my friend was pregnant a week before she told me she was pregnant. Just yesterday, I had a dream of my coworker, and she just happened to shoot me a text today. I haven't heard from her in months. It's even happened in my waking life where I'll think of someone and then hear from them soon after. Is this just all a coincidence? It's starting to get strange. So yeah, I read quite a few. Why do I always dream things before they happen? I'm talking things I know will happen, like events or appointments. I've had several instances where I would dream about these things as much as months prior. School starts again in 2 months, and I've already had a dream about it. I had to go to a band meeting, and a few nights before I had a dream where I was on a bus with all my bandmates. The most recent one was last night. This Monday I have to get braces. So last night I had a dream where I was admiring my braces. I could even feel them in my mouth. Maybe it was because I was anxious about these things. I'm not sure, but it happens every time I have to do something big. This happens to me a lot, like the other commentator. It very often is like extreme deja vu for me. They can happen years in advance. Often they are about moments in my life that are very intense or transformative. It also happens when I travel. I've had deja vu last for days because of an event that happened for moments, but was dreamt years prior to it happening. It really messes with my ideas about free will and fate. I like to think that the future is like a river. It flows how it flows, but it can be influenced and diverted, but it continues to flow and wants to return to its natural path. I also have examined these events and determined that they often were likely to happen at some point, but some I can't explain, like car accidents with a serious injury or a death of someone I knew, but also small pleasant moments like watching my brother and his teenage daughter riding a jet ski. I dreamt that decades ago, and it didn't make sense until this week when it actually happened. So this is also quite interesting. People are seeing things not only days, weeks, or months, but years before they actually end up happening. Another explanation is that we construct memory. The way we construct memory, it's possible that I dreamt similar images and feelings, and then in that moment I was feeling those things, matched the dream closely, and my brain logically wanted to fill in the gaps to apply it to that moment. The truth is, nobody's really been able to explain it, and you'll get different answers depending on who you ask. Some will explain neurochemistry to you and talk about perception. Others will call it clairvoyance and give you very spiritual answers. Some will give you religious explanations. Concrete answers would be nice, but like many things in life, including dreams, it's open to your own interpretation. I've found much about it to be useful because it often makes no sense until the moment has passed. I do use it to have faith that there's something bigger than all of us going on in this life. It helps me feel better and slightly less crazy. So yeah, um, there's some really crazy and interesting stories. I've read a lot of stories of people dreaming about car accidents, about deaths of loved ones, and actually knowing something that's going to happen before it actually happens. Sometimes people experience near-death experiences and they self-reportedly come back with having psychic abilities or being able to see things and know things before they happen. So let's just take a little look at some more before I start delving deeper into some other topics, and just to take a little look. So yeah, I look at these things because I find it. I've experienced this in my life, and very similar stories to this. And thankfully, nothing terrible or nothing frightening has happened to me. But yeah, I'd always be really interested in this because I find it really curious and interesting to think that there is a great possibility we may actually have these abilities to be able to see into the future, things before they happen. And the more and more you look into stories about this, the more and more you see people claiming some really strange and weird and wondrous stories. One of the threads I was looking at yesterday was looking at stories of people visiting psychics and whether or not their predictions had come true. And even there, I found some pretty crazy and interesting stories where some really strange and weird and wonderful stuff had actually happened. And some psychics were actually be able to predict a lot of details of people's lives. Obviously, some psychics are unable to do that, as you find, and some people report. But there are a lot of stories that are quite perplexing and mind-blowing, like, a psychic knowing that the subject is pregnant before they know they're pregnant. So I just found it interesting. And I wondered to myself how things like this may or may not take place. And yeah, anyway, that's just how I'm going to start this video. Just looking at the fact that these people do experience this. This does happen. I've tried to explain it scientifically in my own mind how it's even possible for someone to perceive the future before it even happens. One of the explanations I've found was that, we live in a variable matrix where there are only so many points of information that currently now exist, and they will inevitably lead to a predetermined and predestined outcome. And it's very difficult for me not to believe in destiny and predetermination, because, how can that not be the case if, there's so much informational points of data that can be looked at now, and if interpreted correctly, you can see where they will lead and what will essentially take place and happen within the future. So what I'm essentially saying is that we exist in a matrix of variables, meaning differences and variations within people's thoughts, beliefs, minds, stories, physical points of information, location, etc. And if you could put all of this together and process it well enough, you would be able to ultimately predict the future and be able to see what would take place and occur within the future. If you're able to take every single known and unknown variable, you would see that that is a certain configuration that would unfold to certain inevitable and unavoidable events. And one of the questions I asked myself is, 10 years ago, if I had asked myself, what would you be doing in exactly 10 years from now? We would find that I wouldn't know the answer to that, obviously. Maybe I'd have some presumptions of what might be taking place 10 years if you asked me 10 years ago. But ultimately, what ends up happening 10 years later is inevitable. Like, for instance, right now, I'm currently making a YouTube video, and it was ultimately an inevitable outcome. And if it wasn't an inevitable outcome, it would not be happening. So as you can see, there's a certain aspect, an element of inevitability that occurs within our life. The events that will transpire, even with your free will, even with your ability to make choices and decisions that should influence the future. Ultimately, the choices and decisions that you will make now going forward are inevitable, because they're going to happen, whether you like it or not. And as much as we can influence the future, I find it to be a dance of the future going to take place and our participation within influencing and creating that future. But ultimately, what I'm saying is the choices that you will make from now going forward are ultimately inevitable. The thoughts that you will have, the choices you will make, they are inevitable, and they will take place one way or another, whether you like it or not. And the inevitable nature of reality will continue to unfold before your eyes. So the way I looked at it is, because it's inevitable that we're going to make the choices we're going to make in the next 5 to 10 years, even though we may learn new information, even though we may grow in certain aspects and ways, make new choices, and change certain outcomes within our life, all those outcomes, all those choices, all those thoughts are inevitable. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Like, basically, when I stop doing this live video, whatever I'm going to think about and whatever I'm going to end up doing is inevitable. I don't know what I'm exactly going to think about. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing, but it is inevitable and it's unavoidable. So because it has an element of inevitability, it has an element of predetermination. Reality has a predetermining factor because of the inevitable nature of the future. The future is inevitable. Time will continue to pass and progress inevitably. And what we do within that time, as time progresses, and the choices and decisions we make and the thoughts we have, are ultimately inevitable and will take place one way or another. So when you see the inevitable nature of it, you can begin to see that, well, wait a minute, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, no matter how much I participate within the future, no matter how much I manage to influence or change the future. Whether those changes take place or not, whatever's going to take place is going to take place. So I think there's a certain element of us within regards to these precognitive dreams that are able to sense beyond time, the linear format of time, at least anyways, and sense the future before it happens. Because in one level or another, our subconscious / superconscious maybe is able to process all these variables, and in processing all of these variables, deliver us dreams and visions of things that happen before they happen. Okay, so if we look at some of these precognitive stories, we'll end up seeing that people do end up dreaming the future before it happens. There's many stories of this. And so if there is no predetermining nature and factors within reality, then how are people able to do this? How are they able to see something before it happens? If there isn't a certain level of predetermination and destiny within regards to reality. Now, what you make of this is really up to you. I'm just sharing some of my perspectives and thoughts of how I've been tackling this idea within my mind, because I find it extremely curious and interesting to think that there are certain aspects and elements of our own consciousness, of our own being, that we are unaware of, that actually have abilities to perceive reality in a way in which we don't completely fully understand yet. You know, some of my dreams I look at and they're so absolutely strange. You know, sometimes I'll dream video games as though I'm in a video game and video game characters in some sort of fantasy world. And I just find it so strange and interesting to think that our subconscious can create these really random configuration experiences. And it makes me think even more about what our consciousness is ultimately capable of. I mean, you have to think about it. The fact that you can dream and your dream simulates an entire reality through your mind is quite unbelievable and quite powerful. It shows that, you know, within regards to producing realities, you do have that power, at least within your dreams anyway. So, you know, I looked at that and I would think to myself, well, if we're able to produce realities that take place in our dreams, how much of that is representative of our influence of this reality? Does this reality have any aspects of a dream that can be compared to a dream? You know, so in my spare time, I always look at these stories that are sometimes quite woo-woo, but when people are telling you that they're dreaming of someone dying before they die, you got to ask yourself and be a little bit curious as to how that actually takes place and how that actually happens. So that's some of the stuff I've been thinking about lately. Some other things I've been thinking about are reality and space-time and the universe and its infinite, perceivably and presumably infinite nature. I don't know if you know this, but some scientists actually and physicists actually don't believe the universe is infinite. Some do. So I found that quite interesting to see that actually some scientists, don't actually believe the universe is infinite. And when we look at astronomy for a bit and we look at stars, we're actually looking back in the past when we're looking at stars, because, they're measured in light years, the distances of these stars, of these galaxies. And a light year ultimately calculates how far light travels in 1 year across the universe, and 1 Earth year. So our known observable universe is about 40 billion light years, meaning that the furthest point in space we're able to see is 40 billion light years away, which is really, 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 really far. And it means that the light that we're actually looking at, we're looking back in the past about 40 billion years ago. Some objects in space are so far that their light has not even reached Earth yet, because that light travels one way or another and it keeps traveling for, millions and billions of light years. And our known observable universe, as much as we're able to see, is about 40 billion light years away. So that means that when we're looking at that outer region of the known observable universe, all the light we're looking at, we're looking back in the past 40 billion years ago. So I just find that extremely interesting to see that when we're looking in space and when we're looking at light that's traveling all the way to get here, and those stars twinkle, we're actually looking back in the past, because that's how big the universe is. That's how far these stars are away from each other, that they travel for so long in order to get to us. The light from the sun to the earth takes about 8.5 minutes to reach Earth. And that's, traveling at the speed of light, which I think is about 300,000 kilometers per second or something like that. So the speed of light is extremely fast, and it's the fastest movement we're able to see or know of. We don't know of anything faster than the speed of light, because the fastest thing we've actually been able to observe is light and the movement of it as it reaches Earth, in our ability to be able to see it. The oldest galaxy we've been able to look at is about 13 billion years old. And another interesting thing is that all of these objects in space, these galaxies, these stars, they all seem to be moving apart from each other, and some are actually merging. I actually found this out the other day. Galaxies can actually merge with each other, and actually do merge with each other, and actually create a new, like, super galaxy. And sometimes the black holes at the center of these galaxies actually merge. And it's just so interesting when you look at this, when we're looking into space and seeing how crazy it is. You start to wonder to yourself, first of all, I find, if we are living in a infinite space time continuum matrix, I find it interesting to think of how this eternal infinite void was even created or came about to exist in the first place. Let's have a look at some of these topics over here. I can hop on and talk about some of my experiences with dream interpretations if effort. I'm absolutely up for that, Sacred Terra, and you're more than welcome to do that. You'd be the first person on my live stream on here for a real long time. And absolutely, you're more than welcome to do that, and we can have a nice little conversation. I'd really appreciate that. You're totally, totally, totally welcome. Light years aren't real, Jesse. You're familiar with well, light years are real, because when we're looking at stars, that light has to travel. And all a light year is the distance that light takes to travel for a year. How far does light travel in an Earth year? So you can't, you're more than welcome to keep your perspective, but we're looking at the calculation of how light travels, the speed at which light travels. When you turn on a light, or when the sun comes up, that light has to travel. It has to hit Earth. If we turn on a light here, this light's traveling at a certain speed. All a light year is calculating the speed at which that light travels. So it does exist because light has to travel at a certain speed. It's not exactly instant. And those stars that we're looking at are really far, and that light has to travel to us in order for us to be able to actually see them in space. And but yeah, please join the live stream. I'd love to actually talk to you. My brother Space is animated. My friend's story of creation is the first chapter of the Bible. I hear you, but when you start actually looking at space, it's really, really impossible for a whole bunch of people to be lying about the observations and findings. You can take a common telescope and you can actually see Saturn's ring from a telescope. And these movements of these constellations and stars have been monitored for thousands of years throughout human civilization. There we go with Sacred Terra. But that's just where I'm at. Hey, Sacred Terra, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Great to see you, man. I see we have different perspectives, which is good. I more than welcome that. But yeah, I would love to hear some of your stories about dreams you've had. Maybe we can dig a little bit deep into this, and I'll ask you some more questions as we go along.
That's fine. I just want to mention one thing about the light years.
Yeah.
Just for perspective, if you want, they say the closest star is 4 light years away, which is like 25 trillion miles or something. If you use the clock and you use the seconds on the hand and you counted to 1 trillion seconds, do you know how long that would take?
No.
Almost 32,000 years. So the inverse square of law states for every time you double the distance, you get 1/4 of the light refraction coming back. So to me, basically, I can't say why. I know it because it's more than what I believe. Like, I actually lived on a military base, and I was in the aerospace. I was at the Patriot Missile Systems repairman, so I have a little more perspective on it. But we're not going to talk about space. Space actually gives me anxiety, so
but we will talk about it because I think it's a really interesting conversation, if you don't mind. And you obviously have some interesting knowledge on your behalf. But you do believe light obviously travels at a certain speed, whether it's a light year or not, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what we're perceiving is perspective. So like if you have your horizon, it's called your horizontal eye zone, and it's where they call it the deck of opacity, is where your vision merges together, and that becomes the horizon. So light travels as far as our horizon is. I mean, yeah, when you turn on a light, it turns on instantaneously, but I don't think that, from my understanding, I think it was Walt Disney and NASA. Those are animations and cartoon companies that are basically just trying to keep us in this global matrix. Because if you look at the United Nations map, they know we're on a plane. It says it in the Bible. Like, the Bible is actually a flat Earth book if you look at it, but I wouldn't call it a flat Earth. I would call it a level plane. But to me,
Well, yeah,
based
the Bible says that the earth is stationary and
yes,
motion.
yeah, and I think like the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's how we keep our time. Every time the sun rotates, that's one day. When the moon does its full, because this goes through its new moon and then full moon cycle. That's one moon. Because we, before the Gregorian calendar, we used to have 13 moons or, of 28 days, and then one day of rest, which would be 365 days. Because 13 times 28 is 364.
So the guy that the Hubble telescope was named after, I think in the early 1900s, 1920, he basically found out that objects in space were moving apart from each other and increasing their distance from each other. So my question is, what if I know you obviously are quite skeptical within regards to us being on a sphere and traveling through space. But what if that actually is true? What if all these people who are have been observing space for so long, who've been going to space, who've been doing all this stuff, are actually telling the truth?
I mean, that would surprise me, because I know that most of them are paid and they're under sworn NDAs and all that. And to me, space is, so the outer space would be what's beyond Antarctica, the ice wall. But like outer space looking up, I don't believe in none of that. That's all heliocentric sorcery. Our firmament, they say that the farthest it can go is like 72 miles, and then that's when the firmament starts. So, and it's physically observable. I would say don't use pseudoscience. Don't repeat what others are telling you. Test it and prove it, because there is no proof of a globe. It's all just scientific priests convincing you that what they're saying you don't understand. So then you're like, I don't know. That
Yeah,
makes
but I
sense.
mean, what if it is actually true, dude? Because there's a lot of people who study this that actually look at stars, look at space, and observe certain phenomenons and gravitational waves. There's a lot of money that gets invested into this. Do you really think that there's such a worldwide conspiracy to hide the truth from us? And if so, how have people been able to hide it globally on such a major scale when there's geopolitical power struggles that exist? There's no consolidation of global power on this earth.
So if you look at all the ancient culture, everyone's design of what Earth was, you have a stationary plane with a firmament. You have some people, what people say, Atlas had the world on his shoulders. No, he was holding the firmament. In all those cultures, you can see that through time. Everyone knew it. I think when Admiral Richard Byrd, when he went and did those expeditions, after he came back, and slowly he was on the Longines show, and he explained there's more land, plenty of natural resources. Then they started World War II, and they started globalization. Like before World War I, World War II, before because when Rockefeller started buying the textbooks, that's when they started controlling what people were thinking. They started shutting down natural medicine colleges. They started pushing pharmaceutical industry. Like IG Farben, its biggest headquarters was IG Auschwitz. Auschwitz wasn't just a death camp. It was a made 18 square kilometers of factories, and they were contracted. That's why they had tattoos on them, and they knew where everyone was going, and that's how they did it. And they were building rocket parts back then. If you look at Pina Moon in Germany, when they're doing the rocket experiments, it's all witchcraft. I believe. I think it's all just hypnosis to keep people separated from the creator.
Yeah, I personally believe that it's impossible to hide.
They
You
don't want
can. Yep.
excuse me, they don't want you to know the power that you have, because when you connect with Earth, you put your feet on the ground, you know the cycles of the sun and the moon. Like, even just for instance, so you know all that, and it gives you back your power. You're able to receive, and you can feel true, and you lift your frequency. And but like, if you look at the North Star, is the central point. There's monuments where
Yeah,
the
Polaris.
the North Star is always in the same spot. You know what I mean? Like, if something was moving, we would be able to observe it. And there's nothing observable. It's all camera, uh, wide. What do you call those? Wide fish lens angles, CGI harnesses, helium balloons. NASA owns all the almost all the helium in the world. They're using stage props, telling people that they're going somewhere. And the main thing is that NASA's they're laundering over $300 billion a year. That's, like, they could be helping countries instead of pretending that they're going to go somewhere else. That's why I really believe that's the thing. They don't want you to know the power you
I,
have.
I feel like a lot of people insinuate that the people that potentially control the world are somehow aware of all this magical shit that we don't know. I don't believe that. These people honestly seem clueless within regards to what it is that they're doing. I mean, when you look at how much research goes into all of this stuff, it really seems like they don't know and they're trying to figure out where reality came from and all of these things. If you look at one human guy's life, they live like 70 years maybe in one of these special access projects. I mean, what is the longevity of being able to conceal something like this of this magnitude? Because I honestly, looked at a lot of the flat earth stuff, and I was convinced initially, but I started looking into astronomy and actually space and the history of it, dating back to the Vedics, and so forth and so on, and their understanding of astronomy and cosmology. And people have been tracking, like for instance, Halley's comet. The Chinese have been tracking since 250 BC. So how throughout human history have they managed to lie about something that people have been observing, tracking, and monitoring throughout different civilizations for thousands of years? You know, I just, I just think that it's so huge to hide, dude. It's impossible to hide. And the guys, if the guys were hiding it, like, what would be their motivation behind, keeping that from us? Like, if these guys live like only like 70 years, what is their motivation? To have power when you're gonna die in a couple of years? I mean, does that really make sense?
That's a wide question. You know, I honestly, if you would ask my opinion, I don't believe in any of those characters. Honestly, I think they were actually just made up characters after, because civilization has reset more than once. If you look at the way the ancients built in Egypt, the way the ancients built in Mexico, there's the same patterns of the builder races who actually built this place. This When it was created, there was a builder race. God used them, and then I believe eventually God separated us. He put the firmament down. I'm not sure the whole story and the whole timeline, but to me, to watch, if you look at architecture, like, everything that they're building today is to conceal our past. And the people who knew this, that's what they do. They went around. Like, I think the World's Fairs were just exposés where the elites gathered and they traded their resources while they destroyed all the other countries, all the other cities in the world. Because if you look up, like, the Chicago fire, there's been a fire and a major restoration of every major city in America, and it's all within 2 years. It was supposedly destroyed and then rebuilt, which I think is a lie, because you can look at, even back then they were using Photoshop, but manually doing it, cutting the pictures out. And so I think this is all just a deception, an illusion. It's actually just like a life experience to prepare us for the next life. And they're literally luring our soul with a solar system and pushing you down, lowering your density with gravity. And that's my belief. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just, if you disagree with me, I'm just saying that's how I feel, because I see in the spiritual realm.
No, look, don't take me poking holes in the argument as a a sign of offense.
No, okay.
Rather just see it as someone who was actually interested in the flat Earth story,
Hmm.
and eventually, uh, I looked at everything and I just struggled to understand how they're hiding it from us. And I mean, as I said, you can look at through a telescope and you can see Saturn's ring. So how do you explain that? Why is
So
why is why is
yeah,
there a why when you look at them through a telescope, like anyone can do this, are they actually um
they're
are they actually
pulsating. They're orbs. They're beautiful. They don't just look like the cartoons on Disney. They're actually light energy beings that are within our realm. I believe they're giving us certain energy. I believe each planet is connected to a different part of our body, and like that's why when you feel anger, they say that's from Mars and it affects the liver. I'm not into all that stuff, but I know that there's some truth behind it, because why would people believe that? Every fairy tale has a little bit of truth to it, but
but
the
as
thing,
I'm saying, like you can use the telescope and you can see Saturn's ring, and you
have
can
you seen it?
actually
Have you done it?
have I done it? I've looked at people using amateur telescopes looking
Okay,
through
and what do you see
Saturn.
though? You don't see like what NASA's showing you. You're seeing a pulsing energy that's
No,
fixed.
that's only with that Nikon camera. With certain telescope, you can actually see Saturn's ring through pretty
If
uh,
well,
entry level telescopes.
I have an app. I have a flat Earth clock app, and it's if I could get, if you, it's cost $3. Like maybe you should talk to Flat Earth Dave if you want to know the best way to do it. Go to flatearthdave.com, and you could start listening to some of his interviews. He's got a challenge on there. If you could provide
But
one,
you do agree there's a possibility that the Earth is not flat.
I know the Earth is not flat, but I know it's a horizontal level plane. Like my table that I eat on is round, but it's still flat. You know what I mean? There's tunnels, there's mountains. The highest land in our Earth is Antarctica. If you look at it, like the
But
highest.
do you agree that you could be proven wrong and not know that?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, when we listen to flat Earth people and their information, it's the same as listening to from a skeptical
No, no,
perspective
no.
as
I,
listening
flat,
to.
sorry. I don't believe that. I think flat Earth is actually about to explode, because what the Google algorithm has been hiding flat Earth, because it was actually the top highest rated search on Google before COVID and all that. And then they try to hide it. But now, like, if you want, like, because there's real flat Earth and then there's the Flat Earth Society, and that puts a flat disk into a solar system. So it's giving you two false models and saying this is crazy. No, I'm not. I don't know. If you could prove it to me, yes, because I'm a scientist. Like I know how to study, I know how to, measure, take variables, come up with my conclusion, and then boom, like. But to me, I know when someone's lying to me. I mean, I don't know it. I can feel it. You know what I mean? Something's not right here, and then I'll look into it.
No, I think having this conversation is good. I think we obviously sit on different ends of the argument,
Mhm.
um, and I'm glad we're actually able to have this conversation. Um, but I'm just asking, like, what if it is true that we are living in an infinite a vacuum of space? Because
I know,
what is, sorry.
I know it's not true. Like if you, all right, if you put a candle in a jar and then you close it, there's no fire in there. Like uh, something pressurized air needs a container. Like if how it makes no sense. I don't know. Everything that they say is so stupid that it doesn't make sense.
But have you been to space?
No one's been to space. All right. I'll send you some links for all the documentaries where you can watch actual NASA missions where they actually do their work. What's going on? I could like, all right. If you just go to just to pop your cherry on it, go to It's not this is all known information. Go to Hibbler Productions. He's got a YouTube channel, and on his YouTube channel, he's got Level with Me, The Next Level. He's got Old World Order, Maui and 15. There's all these different documentaries that expose and show real scientific data, real historians, real scientists, everyone that's experts in their field, and they explain it to you to where you understand it. not to where you have to believe it and just take their word for it, you know?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to say I don't believe the earth is flat anymore. But, let's just agree to disagree.
Yeah,
So, because I am studying, astronomy and space and shit just out of interest. Because that's what I believe now. The way I looked at it was that, the Illuminati, the world order, this and that, the Chinese, all of this. How are they? Like, some people have said that nukes don't exist. You know, I don't know if you ever heard that before. Have you heard that before?
I've heard it. And all I know about that is when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, there was only one man allowed to take photographs. There was only one news company that reported the media then, and supposedly that everything was fine 3 days later. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I wasn't there. I know all forms of bombs are terrible. I don't agree with any kind of war, but that whole thing is another form of mind control because I got a bigger weapon. No, I got a bigger weapon. It's like who's got the biggest weapon
But do you really
scenario.
believe these people are so smart, dude? They're so much more smarter than us that they have to go ahead and hide these things from us. I look at a lot of these world leaders and I just think to myself, I'm like, these guys don't look that smart, dude.
No, I don't think that they're smart at all. It's like going to the magic show and you already know the trick, so it doesn't work on you. What they are is deceived and paid off. Some of them are have blood cult ties. It's different. I don't know. I don't know how the Illuminati works, but I know that originally intended that Illuminati is the enlightened ones and that those people should be working for God and making this earth better. But I don't know what happened. You know, that's a good question. It would. I don't think they're. I think they're. No, they're not smarter than us at all. They just have that control. You know what I mean? They're in the club. They've been doing it. Their families have been doing it. History's been rewritten for their favor. Um, I don't know. People are
Okay,
waking up
so
to
we've
it.
established our different positions. I'm still going to
Yeah.
hold my position
Okay.
respectfully. Let's move on to some more lines of questioning, if you don't mind, within regards to different topics. So, do
Okay.
you believe in fate or destiny?
Absolutely. That's actually what I wanted to talk about is with the dreams. Like I believe every
Before
dream.
before we get there, before we get to the dreams, I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you about that. I'm getting there, but I just want to know. I just want to break the questioning down a little bit more. Okay,
Hmm.
so what makes you believe? So you're using the dreams to explain why you believe in fate or destiny. Is
Well,
that
I can
correct?
go before that. Just growing up, I was always we prayed every night. We prayed over our food. We went to church. Um, wasn't really like I never really read the Bible much at all because I'm Catholic. So I went to Catholic school and I learned and I prayed and I used to. I just my prayer life has always. So I've been through a lot of ups and downs in my life, but I always held on to my faith. And every time I've prayed for something God that God willed it happened. You know what I mean? I had to pray for it. So and destiny, yeah, my destiny is what
So
my go ahead.
before we go into that, do you mind telling us some stories of times where you prayed for stuff and it happened?
Um.
If you can remember.
So yeah. Like I was saying about the when my eyes stopped working for 3 days, I couldn't open my eyes.
Yes.
We actually prayed for that collectively. The dream interpretation group I'm with, we all did that. Um. Just I don't. There's so many throughout. I can't think of one right now specifically. I'm sorry. You kind of put me on the spot.
It's okay, don't
I'll
worry.
keep that in
So
the back of my mind. I'll keep thinking about that.
So throughout your sorry, just one second. So throughout your experience, what you're basically saying is that you've prayed in your life and you've noticed that prayer actually does work.
Yes, and
Yeah.
trying to be good. Because when I don't like, because I've struggled with drug addiction. So when I was in my drug addiction days, I was very selfish. You know what I mean? And not open to being a good person. You know what I mean? I still prayed. I was still kind to people, but it was all about me. And then now things are different. I have good community. I have good family. So just fate and destiny. It goes together, I guess. I like one time I was a little kid and we played kickball, basketball, or not basketball, kickball, football, boxing. There's a huge field. We would meet up every morning or every day after school. And there was a drive by that happened, but I didn't really pray for it. I think God kind of pushed me off the field. He made me like it was in the middle of the game. I just like had a feeling, and I walked off the field and I went and sat down, and I start praying for some reason, and then you hear drive by, bunch of bullets, automatic weapon, and no one got hit though. You know what I mean? So just
Wow, that's unbelievable. That's
yeah,
crazy.
and I've heard many other people's testimonies. Just it's something to having a higher, having a higher power, having faith in God. To me, it's Jesus, my Lord and Savior. So having the miracles, it's a part of what people. I think when we were born with it, everyone was born with it, and then the older you get, you slowly start to forget about it. And I think
So
that's their
that's quite
job.
a that's quite a miraculous story. Have you had anything else like that, or heard stories of miracles that have happened to people?
Um, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
like healing people. I've seen like me personally, I started having seizures when I was going to school for nutrition, and I don't know, it was really bothering me, everything that I was learning, just like the chemical companies and the contracts and stuff. So I finished out my studies, but I started having the epileptic seizures, and then I had two grand mal seizures back to back, 2 days in a row, and then I prayed. Like I felt devastated. I felt like my soul got ripped out of my body, and I felt like I was the only person in the world. I felt so alone, so scared. I started praying. I said, "Please, Father, send me a recipe so I can cure my seizures, and like so help me do good so I can work for you." Like I don't remember the exact prayer, but then the next day I get the recipe and I started making my own medicine, and I don't have seizures anymore. Like,
Wow, that's incredible.
yeah.
So tell me a bit more about these dreams you've been having that you want to speak about.
So I'll keep it pretty simple. How I started with my like I have a lot of dreams that come to pass, and I can't talk about a lot of them. Some of them I can't even remember. But what started it? I was going through the VA, and I was having these dreams, and I was talking to psychiatrists and psychologists and mental health specialists. I went through the whole works. Took their drugs, then stopped taking the drugs, then went on the mindfulness through meditation program and did it the natural way. Learned a little bit more about myself and dealing with anxiety and stuff. So then I found dreams through the Dream Life Decoded. John Redenbaugh, he's actually the director of the Spiritual Intelligence Services. He interpreted my first dream, and it was an encounter dream that I had with Jesus, and it was so we figured out that it was an encounter dream, and it was a seer gift, that I was receiving a seer gift as a child. Because long story short, the dream was I'm in my bed and I get up and I turn on the TV, and there's a bunch of people gathered they were gathered praying, and then they said, "We're gonna bless your." I was wearing the it's a garment that we were my scapular. They say, "We're going to bless our scapulars now, and if you're not here, you can just put your scapular on the TV and we'll bless it for you through the TV." So like in my dream, I put my scapular on the TV, and then Jesus came out of the TV and picked me up in the air and was hugging me. And then like my eyes opened and I was standing up in my bed and I was like hugging a white figure. I couldn't see him. I was too short, but I was just like hugging him and hold on to him. And then he disappeared. And I ran to my mom's room. I was like, "Mom," I was like, "Jesus just came out of my TV. He picked me up." And my mom was like, "Okay, that's awesome. Go back to sleep," But so with that being
So
said, go
did
ahead.
you experience that hugging while you were awake?
Yes, so in my dream, I was dreaming. I knew what was going on. This was a lucid dream. They were telling me, like, if you want to get your scapular breast, put it on the TV. I did that. And then when Jesus actually picked me up in the dream, then I woke up and I was standing like on my bed and I was hugging a figure. So that was the one of the that's not my first dream. That's one of the first dreams that I remember that I was like,
And could you, when you woke up and you were standing on your bed, could you see the figure?
yeah, bright light. I couldn't see no face or anything. I was like hugging. I was hugging his legs, basically, his waist. I was a little kid. It was, yeah, and it was like the and I hate to relate it to this, but it's better than any drug ever. Like that's the happiest I've ever been in my life is that dream, and like that's part of what my destiny is: figuring out dreams, helping others with their dreams, bringing people to learn about what we do, Dream Life Decoded, and the Spiritual Intelligence Services. Um, what we do every time we use the Joseph method because, like I was mentioning earlier, Joseph, son of Jacob, he was having the dreams when he was a child, and he was telling his brothers and sisters because he had 12 brothers um, about his dreams and how the sun and the moon
Yeah.
started bowing to him, and they got upset about it. They said, "What do you think we're going to bow down to you?" So they sold him into slavery. Later on, while he's working, he gets accused for sleeping with Potiphar's wife, so he gets imprisoned. He meets the chief cupbearer and the chief bread baker to Pharaoh, and they both have a dream. And he's like, "Tell me your dream." The chief bread baker, he said, I can see, what do you say? I'm walking and I have 3 bread baskets on my head, but crows are attacking the baskets." And then he says, "Okay, so in 3 days' times, you're going to be impaled at the stake." And that's what happened. 3 days later, that guy died. And then, but the cupbearer, he said, "My dream was I had a cup of wine and there was 3 grapevines and I was bringing the cup to Pharaoh." He said, "Oh, okay, so in 3 days' time, your job will be restored and you will be with Pharaoh again." That happens. This guy remembers that he was in jail with Joseph years later, and Pharaoh has the nightmares of the wheat, the wheat leaves pop up, 7 wheat leaves, or was it 5? I can't remember if it was 5 or 7, but the wheat leaves pop up, and then beautiful, bright, and then the burnt and scorched ones devour them. And then the next stream after that, it was 5 beautiful fat cows, and then 5 dead cows came out of the Nile and devoured them. So it might have been 7 and 7 because that's when he did the. So
Yeah, 7.
he knew from that the actionable intelligence. So basically, what we've done is analyze all the dreams in the Bible. There's we actually have an ebook. It's Dreams Through the Bible ebook. It's on dreamlifedecoded.com. It's a free ebook, and there's a 21 Dreams Through the Bible series where our director, he goes through and he explains everything. So we excuse me. We start in humility. We identify the key symbols. We have a conclusive summary. We have our analysis, and then we gather our actionable intel. So like from the, you know what I mean, that's the basic gist of it. So just like referring to that dream, he knew you're gonna have to, he said Pharaoh would have to appoint someone who can rule over the land and a wise man that can run this country, basically. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it memorized.
No, it's all good. Don't worry, you're doing a good job.
And he says, "Well, this man shall be you." He names him the viceroy of Egypt. He gives him the lancet ring. He's in charge of all of Egypt. And then years later, his brothers come to get grain from him, and he does the thing where he tells them, "You have to leave your little brother here, so that way he could see his dad again." And but it's just, I like so many of dreams. My first dream, I remember my first dream. I climbed the St. Louis Arch from the outside. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that monument. You know what I mean? It's like that for me was a dream of destiny, showing that I don't need to be, you know, inside of the train cart, because normally you would go in the cart to get to the top and then you have a whole view. It's like I was trying to climb it from the outside. And then my grandmother even came and chased me while I was climbing up it, and I just started laughing and went even higher, you know. So it's like it's the figurative language of God. Um, there are demonic attacks and bad things do happen in dreams, but those do not come from God. God, every dream comes from God, is what I believe. What our whole organization believes that, and there's, you know, you have to break it down and get the actionable intelligence out of the dream, which is very effective because, you know, it saved all of Egypt. Right now, we're doing things where there's governmental level dreams. People will have dreams. I saw this airplane. It crashed at this time in this state, and this happened. And then they'll go through the process, and they'll be able to say like you know, things that they've prevented from happening or were at least informed on happening. Yeah, and then the prophetic dreams, those happen too. Like I've had many reoccurring dreams where it's like a
Yeah,
battle
please
scenario.
take your time with this. Take your time.
Yeah, it's like a battle dream, and I've experienced it from about 6 to about maybe 25, 26, somewhere around there. Because I prayed to stop dreaming of it because it was getting too intense. And at first I was just an observer, and then I was like promoted through the ranks. Then I became like a general, and then I'm all the way at the top, and I'm like giving orders and telling people, and it's like chaos is going on. But I started praying. I prayed to stop to have those dreams, and I learned because I was really into the fake news and learning about, or not learning, listening to all the lies with this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. So it was affecting my dream life. When I gave all that up, um, I didn't have those dreams anymore. But long story short, that scenario, that place where I have many different vantage points and different layers in that dream, I actually went there and visited that place unknowingly. And I'm just sitting there on the pier, and I'm like, it hit me. I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, deja vu hit me again. And I was like looking around, and I was like, wow, this is the place. But so I've prayed for that not to happen. And I believe like you can
Sorry, let me
pray.
just break
Go
that
ahead.
down. So you
Yeah.
dreamt of a location repeatedly, and then one day you happened to find yourself there. And when you found yourself there, you felt a sense of deja vu and remembered that you had actually dreamed of that location you're in.
Yes. Yeah, it was a but like more than deja vu. It was like because I think it's something with because my father's epileptic, I'm epileptic. I think it's something with my epilepsy, but like the deja vu would make me really nauseous. It'd make me really scared, anxiety, and then like now if I don't take my medication, like I won't have a seizure, but I'll start to get that same like it feels like a deja vu and a premonition at the same time. So it's like your brain's going crazy. It's like this is supposed to happen, but it already happened. It's like what?
And so, what was the relevance of all that war that you were seeing take place? Was it a war that you were perceiving?
Yeah, it was a war. It was a big war. I think it was the globalization war, but I'm praying, trying to pray it out of existence. And I don't know. I honestly don't even want to talk about it. It's just lots of airplanes all over the sky and stuff like that. But that's one thing. I've had lots of dreams with airplanes falling out of the sky many different times, different vantage points, going back to the same dream and seeing it from a different vantage point. And I don't know. It's just I used to be afraid about it. Like I'd walk outside and I'd hear an airplane roll up real low and close, and but I kind of worked that out of my kind of worked that out. I had to work near the airport many times, so I kind of got used to that sound, and now I just pray on it and I try to break down the dream, like, and then like if like there's always like our organization is there's tens of thousands of people that are involved with Dream Life Decoded, but then within the actual spiritual intelligence mentorship and the spiritual intelligence services, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are trained by our director, and they help a lot of people. You know, there's something you dreamed about 15, 20, 30 years ago that you don't even remember, and then one day it hits you and you understand the key symbols behind it, the analysis, the summary. It's like, oh, boom, 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 and it can lead to great things because before this, like I said, I was going crazy. I was trying to figure everything out on my own, listening to all the doctors, listening to all this and this and this and this, and just not following my intuition and not really trying to listen to the Lord, you know.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so, did you have any other dreams that really made you question reality?
Question reality.
Or no, or just or a precognitive dream or a prophetic dream.
So I've had a lot of dreams where I'm fighting demons, and those dreams are usually really scary because you wake up like sweating, you still feel the pain sometimes. It's like, what the heck just happened? But as far as prophetic dreams, like, I think that's like God's realm. I'll, like, when I remember them and I can talk about them, I will. But like that was part of our thing, and we were supposed to list some of the prophetic prophecy or something like that. I left that part blank because I'm not going to call myself prophetic or anything, but I tend to see the patterns, and I think if we keep an open eye and we learn how to see and hear, dreams are a big portion of to reality. It's like dreams and night visions as well.
How do you feel about near-death experiences?
Um, that's something I've never talked about. I've wanted to talk about. I think that changes the way the mind is wired sometimes. Like I've gone through surgery and come back, and then my dreams become way more lucid, like since my surgery. So near death experience, I think that's a it's like another stamp that God gives you. Like if you come back and you know you're able to see, because a lot of people when they have their near death experiences, they're always saying, "I was surrounded by angels," or "I received the word." You know what I mean? I think that's like a extra live, like a bonus chance or something. And I think God does that for certain reasons for people to affect the world, affect their communities in a positive way.
Amazing, yeah, because lately it's quite a research topic in this modern era where a lot of doctors have been tallying up all these stories of clinically dead people. And then some of it sounds like an hallucination, but a lot of it sounds quite real because they report things that they shouldn't have been able to know, like things the doctors were doing, things the doctors were saying, and at times even who was. My mom actually had one. She had a cesarean with my sister, and I think she died on the operating table, and she left her body, and she was looking down at her body from the ceiling. She also has another story where I had jaundice, and my grandfather came to visit her and tell her that he should check on me because I was sick. So she was almost like told about it before it happened. Have you heard any stories like this from families or friends of just strange stories?
Yeah, I know it happens a lot. I can't think of one specifically right now, but I think that is yes, there are. You can have encounter dreams. That's like an encounter, but then also God can be using certain family members to maybe try to deliver some other message or use them as a like a figure. You know, I'm not sure honestly. That's something because some of my dreams I feel like they're actually real. You know what I mean? Like I know I'm dreaming. I'm making decisions, and I'm seeing people that have passed, or people, or you know what I mean, people that I haven't seen in a long time in my dream. It's like I don't know. That's a really good question. I can find out more about that, especially how to say it, speak it, you know, the right way.
Amazing. And what do you think the purpose of life is? I know that's a bit of a curveball, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I think life is the purpose for life is to learn and to try to your lift others around you and to try to be good. You know what I mean? I think life is a, it's a valuable experience to prepare us for the afterlife because I don't I know for a fact that it's not just this, and if it isn't, then I'm happy to be wrong, but deep down inside, I know it. So to leave this place a little
Good
bit
to
better, to leave it a little bit better than you came here, and to try to the golden rule, to do unto others as you would want others to do to you. I think that's really the main thing, and just trying to help people.
Amazing. And so you sound like you've been through some pretty tough times in your life where you're dealing with certain issues. Has fear ever been one of them?
Fear,
Yeah.
yes, lots of fear, but bravery takes courage. So I don't like. I'm that type of person. If I don't have a little bit of fear in me, I don't get too motivated. Maybe I can fix that, but I think it's good to have righteous fear, especially like fear of the Lord and fear of not following the right path. That's the fear that I have now, because like they say, cats have 9 lives. I've probably had 20 or 30.
So you've had, in saying that, you've had a life that seems to be somewhat spiritually guided and protected. Do you feel a sense of protection in your life? I mean, you told me a story where you avoided a drive-by and went into prayer before it happened, and your intuition is what led you towards getting out of there. That sounds to me like a sense of protection. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's definitely protect. It's divine protection. I think it comes from the Lord, and faith. They say you are what you, or no, your frequency is what you do frequently. So I think just growing up with a very religious and spiritual family, but faithful family, definitely. Um, that's it. Like,
So you said a cat has 9 lives, and there should have been many times where something should have happened to you.
hmm
That to me sounds like you've been somewhat protected in your life.
yeah, that's definitely spiritual and divine protection. I to me, I don't know if you know Saint Michael the Archangel. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah.
That's I don't pray to him, but I ask him to pray for me. That's like, can I go ahead and say the prayer right now? Just a little
Yeah,
quick short thing.
please go ahead.
Okay. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, man. That's
You're
amazing.
welcome, brother.
I'm really glad you offered to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think faith is definitely important. I think faith is definitely one of those ways we conquer these fears. I think a lot of people live in fear. I read an interesting quote the other day. Someone had said, "I'm an old man now, but I've experienced many troubles in life, which many of them had not come to be."
Yeah,
You know,
that's fear.
you know,
Wow.
and that's from an older man with a lot more wisdom and experience, looking back at his life, at all the things he'd feared, and hardly of them had ever come true. I also read a statistic the other day that 85% of the stuff we fear doesn't happen. Obviously that's just a statistic, but it's still interesting to see stuff like that. That a lot of us do live in fear of all these irrational fears and things happening to us. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to conquer that is probably through prayer and faith. But how do you feel about fear? Have you feared things in life that were unnecessary in the long run?
Yeah. Lots of things. And I try to just, I think the best way to conquer any fear is to face it, because basically what it is for me, I don't like change. I like my comfortability. I like doing the same thing. And then, there's something new, or this needs to happen. Initially, you're going to feel fear. You're going to feel that uneasiness, but conquering that, I think, is what helps develop the mind, because like you said, fear is what 75% isn't real, and then most people don't live out their lives because of the fear that they actually never came to fruition. And I think fear is just like, I think you've mentioned it before, false evidence appearing real. So if we It's you have the spirit of fear or the spirit of faith. And if you have the spirit of faith, then having a healthy relationship with fear through God, the fear of God, fear of the Holy Spirit, fear of supernatural, that's true. That's very healthy. But anyone who just wants to cause fear or do harm, I think that's something else. And that's a whole different type of fear. I pray for those people who are in those circumstances who have no control over it. But yeah, fears that I believe it's a weapon of the enemy. You know what I mean? Because fear is what creates lies. It's what creates doubt. It creates anger. And if you have truth, then that stuff doesn't really seem too significant. I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing that you said that. That's so true. That fear prevents us from doing things, and it comes from some place that's not of God. My mom would always tell me that. If you could give advice to your younger self in a time where you needed it, what would you tell yourself?
Honor your mother and father. Honor your mother and father, because that's every time I'd stray off the path, my mom would try to help me or my dad would try to help me. Then I would get in my own head. I would be disrespectful, and then there's lots of time where I didn't see my mom for 2 years because I was being an active user and being an asshole. Excuse me for cussing, but that's what I was. I was just terrible. So if I learned to honor my mother and father, I learned it, but I just learn to when keep learn learn how to keep your mouth shut, learn how to listen better, honor your mother and father, and try to eat healthier.
That's really, really good advice. I think after hearing that, I'd probably be inclined to give the same sort of advice to myself when I was younger. Because, a lot of people don't speak about how important family is. There's a lot of people out there giving advice about all these things. But, sometimes we overlook the most simple things that we have in our life, which is our family, our parents and stuff. And I think it's really amazing that you said that. I think that's really important advice to give to a younger person is like that you should respect your family and honor them because they're not around forever, and neither are you. That's really, really good advice. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, what has been preoccupying your mind lately? Your curiosity. What have you been curiously thinking about lately?
Um, I keep the dreams in my mind a lot and watching the world. I mean, it's something I do. I've been watching the world for a long time, just trying to pray the negativity out of existence. Like, I believe through prayer, through faith, we can get the way the people speak about certain outcomes or certain expectations for the world we could save the world just by changing people's expectations and the way that they narrate or broadcast it. And that's something I've really focused on. I've been focused on it for years, just trying to I don't know, raise our vocabulary, learn how to speak properly, and have more empathy.
Yeah, empathy, love, compassion. I think compassion is one of those things that have existed for as long as we know. Because at the end of the day, being in a physical body, you can get hurt. Someone you know can get hurt. So it's just one of those things we're bound to come across, which is, seeing things from the perspective of going through pain and being able to empathize with people that may be going through that pain themselves. Obviously, more empathy on this earth would be great. What I've been also thinking about is war. Like you said, war is terrible. I
Hmm.
don't like war at all. I think killing people is evil. I don't think there's any other way of looking at it. I was looking at, Russia and Ukraine and stuff, and you see things like they have a church for their soldiers. It's just the most backwards anti-Christian thing I've ever seen. Is like, you know,
Yeah.
uh, a church for soldiers. Like Vladimir Putin is, and I'm going a bit off topic here. Is this self-proclaimed Christian? But I mean, I don't believe a Christian would be starting wars and being responsible for the deaths of people.
Yeah. That's a very touchy subject. I was in the military. I had great relationship with my chaplain, and that's That's a hard subject. Yeah, you know, you still want to have your faith, even though you're called to duty, even though it's wrong. They still provide them, you know, their services, their church, their religious preference. Um, but yeah, you're right. The war is terrible, and honestly, I don't think President Putin is trying to start a war. I don't think that these actors on television are starting the wars or trying to start a war. I think it's the people that run the teleprompters and the people that are funding the contracts that get made behind anything, you know. So I believe, like, I was actually listening to President Putin yesterday, and he was talking about, I don't want to cause no harm, I don't want no trouble, but he's like, well, don't push my damn buttons. Is basically what he's saying. He's like, if I ain't the one, and they're trying to use media to. It's like, no, this is your enemy, that's your enemy, he's your enemy, she's your enemy. But actually, the media and the people who control it, the propaganda machine, that's the enemy of the world. Like, I'm praying for. It's like, why don't you use your voices properly? Like, if you obviously know, like, what you can speak into existence. Like, if it's God willing, good things. You know what I mean? These people are. I don't like that subject. That subject gives me anxiety, brother. Like, it's,
Sorry about it.
how do
That's
we
the way.
fix it? How do we fix it, Jesse?
How do you fix it? Sure, that's an even better question. You know, I think that war is not a sign of great intelligence. I don't know if that's just a simple statement to make, but I don't think that, you know, resorting to having to kill people is the most intelligent way to go forward. But we live in such a complicated world with these geopolitical power struggles and the history we have, and all these stories behind why people are getting into these situations in the first place. I mean, look at Israel as well. And it's just strange after everything we've been to after 2020 and all these wars start breaking out. You know, I looked at some videos I probably shouldn't have, which is some war footage. It's extremely. I mean, I can see how people get post-traumatic stress disorder from it. I could see how you could lose your mind from being in a battlefield and surviving that. It's unbelievable stuff for humans to go through. And what blows my mind even more is that this earth has been at war for as long as we know, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but what comforts me is I look at the world and I see how people feel about ethics and about, you know, being politically correct. I know that's not the best example, but it still indicates to me that people are becoming more cautious and cognizant of their language, of how they treat other people. I mean, not so long ago we had slavery. I mean, we still have versions of slavery today. I mean, there's some really messed up statistics. There's still 40 million slaves, something crazy like I don't know how true that is, but I have seen some stuff. I mean, even places in Africa at war. Um, you know, so it's just sometimes you look at it and you think to yourself, wow, we live in a pretty dark universe or dark world. Um, it has been pretty dark with some of the stuff people have been through, the trauma they've been through. I mean, but the fact that, you know, like institutionalized slavery has come to an end, uh, you know, before we were born or whatever, is really good. I think those are really good indicators to show that humans do have a heart. And then when that heart is in the right place, they do make the right decisions. So it gives me comfort to know that people like yourself exist, and there's people out there like you that are you know, not looking to hurt people in any way and trying to help. So it's just good to know that people out there do exist, and that some of the elements of human nature is compassion and empathy and love and care and consideration. So it's just good to see more of that. But as you know, it's quite a divisive world because you see more of that, but you also see more division in the world between people, you know. I mean, let's look at President Trump, for example. I don't know how much of a good example that is, but you know, some things cause division. Some people aren't too happy about it. I think whoever can get in and create peace is good, you know, whether it's Trump or whoever, that's really good. But you look at some stuff online and you see that some people are still prisoners of their own ignorance, and whether it's racism or just hatred or division. Like what I've been noticing a lot lately is this war and battle of the sexes online on YouTube. Men complaining about women, women complaining about men. A lot of men and women wanting to be single these days. Maybe that isolation a couple of years back has affected people in some ways. Some people report things being strange, a bit strange these days, because we've all collectively been through something that's changed the world in quite a big way. And so it's just interesting to see these points of conjecture and division arise, and how society changes and people's disposition towards each other or sexes change. Um, have you noticed that? Have you noticed that there's a lot of
Yeah,
people speaking about wanting to stay single, about
it's
uh, complaining about the other sex and modern women or modern men?
it's I think it's part of the
Like passport bros is one of those things. Sorry?
um I've never heard of passport bros. What's that?
Passport bros is these guys that want to leave America because they're tired of Western women, and
Oh,
they want to find women in other cultures who are more submissive and more gentle or more feminine and nurturing. Because some people complain about the feminism movement
yeah.
destroying women's perspective of men. So it's funny to see how all these things are introduced in society, and then years down the line they start playing out. And now that we have the internet and social media, people are a lot more vocal about these experiences.
Yeah.
Another thing I've noticed is people complaining about inflation, about not having enough money, about the price of things getting crazy. I mean, I've looked at some documentaries today in China. China's experiencing a recession. We're going through a global recession. So it's interesting to see how all those factors play together: war, recession, potential sexism or battle of the sexes. It's just
Yeah.
I find humans really fascinating, But if you focus in the wrong place, the world starts to seem like a dark place. It seems
So
like people don't really care, and people are a bit closed off and a bit cold-hearted. But having conversations like this with people like you, it reminds me that there are good people out there that have good hearts and good intentions, and that just restores my faith in the world. Have you? No, you live in America, is that correct?
yeah. Thank you,
So,
Jessica. Wanted to say thank you too, man. It's you an inspiration for me as well. So knowing you is a good thing, and having more men like you in the world, and your ambition, and your just God bless you, brother. I appreciate you.
thanks, man. I really do appreciate it, and it's quite
Hmm.
great to have conversations like this to
Yeah,
remind you that because you seem like you spend a lot of time alone. Is that correct?
yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Yeah,
And do you have family that are close to you that you have a chance to see or visit?
yeah. I do. I mean, I have my brother and my aunt with me right now, so
That's good.
I still I have my whole family. I moved to a new location, and it's something I've always done. I like my alone time. Sometimes I do it too much. I isolate. It's something I'm working on. But
And and how do you deal with that? Is it something you're used to, something you enjoy? Because I know a lot of people that may be listening to this, they are loners like ourselves. I mean, I'm a loner. I do appreciate socializing with good people, don't get me wrong,
mhm.
but that's not something that commonly happens as much as I'd like it to. So I have to learn how to deal with spending a lot of time alone. And, obviously, while you're still on this earth, you want to live a good life, you want to enjoy your life in whichever way works for you.
Yeah,
And find learning how to enjoy the simple things in life really can help boost your happiness and morale while dealing with stuff like that. Have you got anything to comment on loneliness and dealing with that? So
yeah. Honestly, I don't know if you want to hear this answer, but when I
no,
found
I'm asking you
okay,
because I want to
when I
hear
found
whatever answer
what
you've got. Yeah.
when I finally realized that we're not lost spinning in space. This is my personal. When I found that out, it opened up a world of truth to me. And you know, I spend a lot of time alone, but every day I'm learning almost all day. I'm taking in more information, analyzing other information. Um, and I'm in school too, so I keep myself busy with school. And but I was exercising a lot more. I'm gonna start. We're getting back on an exercise regiment this weekend or after this weekend. So, but just being alone, I think that's something that's a skill that it should be necessary. Like, you know, when who can you count on? You can count on yourself, especially when you're alone. So it's and then not just on yourself, but that's when you have more connection to God. Because like me, I get easily distracted. I'm a bit of an empath, so like if I get around negative environments or negative conversations, then it's gonna affect me. So I just having that peace and just enjoying it. Like honestly, I enjoy my quiet time. I enjoy just closing my eyes and dreaming. I love because I think I did a little extra when I was younger. You know, so now I'm just happy to enjoy a good meal, listen to a good song, have a good conversation. Doesn't take much anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a really great skill to have,
Yeah,
actually. I think it's a really amazing way to be content in life and to have a sense of fulfillment, even while you're just going through what you're going through and going to wherever you're going to.
mhm.
You know, because I've had to learn that. I've had to learn how to, going through really tough times really makes it a lot easier to just appreciate being alive, as
Yep,
simple as that. And just being able to be alive, whether you're chilling, whether you're just thinking about stuff or learning about stuff or just doing nothing.
right.
It's at times where you feel like your life can go wrong and things can just you maybe when you're younger you may have not expected to get as far in life or to be as comfortable as you are now. I always had fears of that when I was younger, of being stuck in a position where I'm always unhappy and unable to change or do things. And I guess as you get older, there's a lot more acceptance. You just accept things for what they are, and it makes you really appreciate yourself. It's in the simplest way possible, and your family, those people close to you. Um, so I think families, for those
Yep.
that have it, it's a really amazing, important thing to have, because when you come into this world, if you're lucky enough, you have a family.
Yep.
If you're lucky, and a lot of people take that for granted because this world, when we're growing up and we're teens and we're younger, is showing us this. Imagine growing up with the social media stuff now. Luckily for me, it was just MTV and Hollywood when I was younger, but that it left a false longing in my heart for this fake world, this fake perception of uh, of a sense of power and entitlement
That's
that
what
caused me a
I.
lot of pain.
Yes, you're right. That's oh man, I was thinking about that earlier when you were saying social media. It's funny they call it social media, but what it does is it prevents you from socializing because now you're looking at this screen admiring someone's best picture that they took and you don't know what's really going on in their life, but now you're comparing yourself to this like and that's what they say comparison is the thief of all joy. And I believe it's because the whole leftist, Marxist agendas, whatever you want to call it, when they introduced first, they started doing the making the little boys think they're girls, let the girls think they're boys, men hating on women, women hating on men, women not wanting to have babies, men not wanting to have babies. You know, it's just so instead of actually physically killing people, they're just mind screwing you so you don't procreate, so you don't live your life, and you just absorb their fears through this device. You know, like that's something that needs to be conquered. Like,
And that's so true, because I think the social media and this false perception of life
yeah,
that's being presented online is causing a lot of people to want this facade in their life to fulfill them. And a lot of people try to hide that. Uh, what I find in my life is through having friends and stuff, there's a lot of envy and jealousy and competition, and there's not enough openness and vocalization of the stuff we're going through.
Yeah.
It's this paradigm, it's this construct of this material world of money and wealth being the most important things to us, that our happiness is dependent on. And everyone's searches, as you said, comparison is the thief of joy. A lot of people are searching for it, they're looking for it, they're trying to put it into their life and hide it from other people, that they may be going through tough times, they may be going through troubles. It's people's greatest fear to let people know that their life is not as good as it seems online. And this conversation may not apply to everyone, because some people are not glued to their phones or looking at social media. But I look at it from time to time. I keep plugged in to the world and see where people's minds are at. And it's evolved from the MTV era to Facebook to the Instagram to all of this stuff. And I believe it still holds people's minds hostage, and getting in the way of their happiness. And I believe a lot more people are presenting to be happier than they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have an honest conversation about happiness and joy, it's not the easiest thing to master. It takes awakening and acceptance and all these things that I'm not going to get into right now, but it takes a certain level of wisdom and acceptance to learn to be happy with where you're at and where you're going. I believe a lot of people wear masks. I don't know if you've heard of this book called 48 Laws of Power. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so
It's been recommended a couple times. 48 Laws of Power.
yeah. So 48 Laws of Power is quite a popular book. It was a New York Times bestseller. But when you actually look at the 48 Laws of Power that are described in this book, it's extremely manipulative, dude.
Oh, yeah.
It's teaching you how to exert power over people through manipulation.
Oh, you're right. I listened to the preview of it, and I was like, I don't need to learn any of this.
But I find what's interesting
it's good to understand how they think, but
it's good to know how people may think and what certain people what strategy they may have when encountering people and talking to you. But I read through those 48 laws and I was like, this shit is evil, dude. This is like straight up learning how to manipulate someone and exert power over them. And I find it interesting that it's a bestseller because it shows you that there are a lot of people interested in this way of thinking, to exert power over people. And, I know we speak about a lot of good stuff and good people, but if we are honest, there's a lot of people that are stuck in their own ways and are manipulative and sociopathic, because we do live in a manipulative sociopathic world. I hate to say it because it may prevent you from looking at all the beauty in the world, but there's a truth to that people can be that way. I've been through a lot of pain, a lot of betrayal, a lot of lies, a lot of people speaking behind my back, a lot of just petty, envious, jealousy, and revenge. And it's always just fascinated me how people's minds can get that way. Because when you go through those 48 laws of power, it's all about concealing your true motives, concealing your true intentions. And I believe that's quite reflective of the world we live in. A lot of people actually live their lives by doing that without even having read a book like that, Where have you got anything to comment on that?
Yeah, that made me think about my little emblem right there. That's my logo, Sacred Guardians. I'm coming up with a comic book in my mind, for the Sacred Guardians and then the globalists, you know what I mean? And then it's gonna be something, I don't know.
Oh, that's epic! So you're working on a comic book. That's amazing, man. That's actually one of my dreams.
That's awesome.
To create a comic book that is really crazy. And
we can put it together, brother.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm working on this app now. So once it's done, I can, and I'm successful in it, I would like to do things like help people like you. Depends on the stage we're at. Inevitably, to help produce things like this, to start producing comics and movies.
For Earth United, right? We're still on with Earth United?
Yeah, still on with it, but I'm finding a different vehicle to get it going, which is this really amazing application I've been building, the social media application.
Cool.
Which is trying to put a twist on social media to not have it with the same old content you see today, which is quite shallow and meaningless. I find myself feeling quite. I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of value from going onto TikTok. It's just entertainment and passing time. So I'm trying to find a way to, this thing that I'm working on is amazing. It's just really difficult and complicated. It's a lot of programming, but it's amazing for creators like yourself to do projects like you're doing now. That's the whole point of it, is to give people the opportunity to become successful in what they're doing, because I know what that feels like,
I bet you I won't be censored on your app either.
No censorship. I don't plan to censor anybody.
I mean, obviously, they need to be censored if they need to, but it's like for speaking truth, that should not ever be a problem. You know what I mean? Like,
no, that should never be a problem. Not at all, because we know free speech is it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as free speech. I had a argument with this and some people on TikTok the other day.
yeah, you went through the whole legal process too. I wrote a letter to my magistrate and my clerk of courts and told them that the fraud that they were presenting against me, I needed to be verified, and I got out of all that. So you know how the legal system works. I forgot about that part. So that's
really? Do you mind if we? So what you're saying is you actually
yeah.
Do you mind telling us a bit more about that?
So I had a garden. It was my aunt's garden my aunt, rest in peace, Christina. She had cancer, and the last part of her apartment I took over because she moved back home so she could be buried in her home country. And this garden, I had been taking care of it for her. She lived there almost 5 years, or almost 3 years, and then I'd lived there for almost 2 years. So this garden, I was taking care of the same garden for 5 years. It was all organic tomatoes, no pesticides, no nothing. I ate from this garden, you know what I mean? She ate from this garden. And then one day they come with this huge truck, and they're spraying some liquid at the gutters because in Ohio it snows, and there was a bunch of frozen snow stuck on the gutters, and they were using some chemical spray. Like, I took pictures of the label, and I was asking them questions, and I was like, please don't spray in front of my house. I was like, don't spray my garden. I eat out of this food. And the guy's like, you got to call the person. And so I called the person, and then when it went sour is when I talked to the actual people that run the apartment complex. I said, hey, they're about to spray my garden. This garden, it's the same garden that Christina had for 5 years. That's 5 years now. And he's like, well, I never told you could have a garden. And then I reminded him, I was like, don't you remember the day I moved in? You were commenting how beautiful the garden was. And I told you how I'd been taking care of it for 3 years. He was like, he hung up on me. I got a piece of paper on my door being subpoenaed for an eviction notice, being evicted and being kicked out of my house because I cussed him out. I started yelling at him. I shouldn't have cussed him out. But long story short, I get the subpoena. So I do my research. This is when you and Christopher James were doing all your work. And I started learning, and I read one of the how to write a letter to your magistrate and to your clerk of courts. So I wrote, greetings, such and such. You're saying on this date that I committed this crime. Well, I'm requiring you to verify your claim. And I said, in order for my appearance, my fee is $25,000 per appearance plus my time per second. And then I sent that to the clerk of courts. Then I sent that was 1 paragraph long. And then I sent a 2-sentence letter to the magistrate. I said, hey, I'm here on special appearance to clarify the record. And for the record, my appearance is going to cost you $25,000 plus all the time that I've spent outside the court addressing this matter. She grabbed a piece of paper. They told me to leave the courtroom. 2 guys followed me. They were like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want you guys to leave me alone. I started telling them how I felt about the system and this and that. And they were like, no, what do you want to do? And they were like, try to get me to sign something. I said, it said defendant, blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm not a defendant. I'm a living man. That's how I wrote. I said, Marian, the living man from the DeSantillo family. And, so he crossed out defendant, and he wrote the living man from my family. And then now if you go look up that court case, it's completely deleted from the system. It hasn't been dismissed or reviewed or not. It's like it doesn't exist anymore. Wow. But I have the documents and the stamps and all the courts. I made videos about it. But you guys saved my life during that part. I was like, that pain and anxiety I was feeling for 4 months before my court case almost killed me. I was like, literally, it was making me sick. and then that just like that relief of energy, like knowing like, wow, this world is really messed up, you know. It's but
Yeah, it's so powerful what you've just said, and I love hearing stories like where people actually, they actually challenge the legal system
I can
because
I
the
can
legal system.
probably send you one and just like block out my personal information, make like a template for people, you know.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
definitely. I'd love to look at that. But I find it interesting to see how flawed the legal system is because when you start mentioning stuff like living man and woman, I've heard a couple stories like this. They just keep quiet or they just don't do anything about it or
Mhm.
they just drop everything. So it's just this little known secret, man. It kind of bugs me. But I think once I become successful enough in this application and revive Earth United and can actually fund lawyers and, and
Mhm.
people who are experts at this, I want to actually challenge the system
Yeah.
as much as possible to get them to explain this, that they're continually getting away with this
Their
constructive.
rules of civil procedure, which only benefit the members of the bar society and whoever can afford their representation. You know,
Exactly.
and just saying that the power behind those words, people just think, oh, that's just a normal statement. No, but if you go in as a living man, present yourself, claim jurisdiction, require an actual crime to be verified, that's the power of the words. And I've done it. I did it again, and I started talking to him. I said, I don't speak legalese. I want to explain to you what happened. And he told me he was going to give me contempt of court if I said anything else, and he would put me in jail for as long as he wanted. So I shook my head and I laughed at him. But you know what I mean. But it's the people who they think they're supposed to be acting honorably as clerk of courts, as
Yeah.
magistrate, as what they are. You know what I mean? And it's not happening. I hope it does. That's what we need to focus on, more things like that. And it's like, and me personally, right now, I'm optimistic, very happy that President Trump did get elected because at least he's exposing. And I've watched every president my whole life. I've watched them. I've talked mad mad shit about all the presidents, and then I started watching President Trump. I mean, I watched him when he was in The Apprentice and all that, but when he was actually president, I started watching him, and I watched like a 2 hour and 45 minute interview, the first one, because somebody said that he said something at like a 2 second mark that was misconstrued. So I listened to the whole thing, started listening to him for years, and I don't necessarily agree with all the stuff that happened in the past and how they had to do it, and these characters were used for that and that. I think more common sense is coming together, more peace is coming together. We're getting people like JFK in the American Human and Health Services. He was, poisoned by vaccines, so that's super right there. I know Elon Musk being brought in. That's a good thing. I'm still hoping he can do help South Africa. He's South African. He should, like, South Africa should have no struggle with, you know what I mean? If you're the richest man in the world, that's something I'm praying for. But I appreciate those people. I think they're still playing whatever part that they have, but at least they're doing it for good. And I'm optimistic about that. I actually didn't sleep for 3 days before the election, man. I was so stressed. I was like, man, we cannot lose.
Wow, that's incredible. It's interesting for me to watch it as not being an American citizen and then to speak and then to try to put myself in the perspective of it from someone like you who is an American citizen. But yeah, I think you're right. I had my doubts about Trump, but he's up. Someone tried to kill him. He was alive. He promotes the Bible.
And he does what he's like. If he says, I'm going to do this, he does it. You know what I mean? Like every other
Yeah,
politician, like all the other ones, they just say whatever they want to get the vote and then see you later. So he's accountable. That's the best thing about him, man.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I hope that when he gets in, he can actually bring peace to this whole situation around the world.
Absolutely.
Because the war is just so unnecessary, dude. Russia obviously has their own reasons for doing what they're doing, but I struggle to understand how invading another country and sending people to war and exercising war it just feels a bit removed from reality.
Yeah, everyone
So,
has their thing. Afghanistan was the opium. Iraq was oil. Vietnam was opium. Ukraine is money laundering and whatever they got going in their tunnels. Like war is just a guise, and that's what one thing he promised. He said we're gonna stop these endless wars. So I pray on that. You know what I mean? Like
No, that's amazing.
they use their voices. I hope they use them for good and be accountable. You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah,
Hey Jesse, I don't mean to be short, but I need to get some lunch.
no, it's all good. I'm about to end the video anyway.
Okay. Can I send you
Thanks.
some information on the Patreon, some of those websites I was talking about and documentaries?
Yeah, please do, man.
Okay.
You can just put them in the comment section of this video, or
Okay, I'll do that.
yeah, you can do that, man. But thanks a lot for actually taking the time to speak. It's been really good. I love hearing other people's perspective. We may not agree on everything,
Right.
but most of the stuff I do agree with you. But thanks a lot for your time, man. It's so good to hear someone else's perspective. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate your time. Keep doing what you do, man. God bless you.
Amen, dude. God bless. And thanks to everyone that's watching. I'll see you guys soon, and keep well. Cheers, bro.
Cheers.
Keep well.